Hello, this is James Hunter, and today's guest, I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Lisa Thompson. She is a best-selling author with books such as Connection to the Cosmos, Sacred Soul Love, and Sacred Soul Spaces. She is also a speaker, galactic ambassador, and an intuitive transformational coach. And for some people who've watched some of my videos already, just a quick little summary. What I do is I like to interview people from different various belief systems and backgrounds as it pertains to asking them things about our wellness. Some people may know my other videos. I'm a psychotherapist, licensed mental health field. That's what I do, physical fitness stuff. So I have my own ideas about things and beliefs. So today I want to ask Lisa some questions that I like to ask people from different backgrounds. So we're going to start right in with my first question. So Lisa, tell us about your background and what you do right now, kind of like your overview of what you do, your services. But more importantly for me, what I'm always interested in is how did you arrive at this point in your life to be a galactic ambassador, intuitive, transformational coach? Was this like at 10 years old, you already knew this is what I'm going to do? Or maybe you have an awakening later in life and now you arrive at where you're at. It can be different for everybody. So go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me here. And yeah, my journey has been quite a roller coaster ride. So definitely it has not been that straight path to getting where I am. I grew up in a very metaphysical, esoteric, spiritual household. So I always had that. My mother was an astrologer in my early years, and all her friends were astrologers, psychics, tarot card readers, witches, things of that nature. And when I was 13, we moved to moved to Yelm, Washington, where we started attending a spiritual school of enlightenment. And we were learning things about creating our own reality, basically that we are our own gods. We have that inside of us, and learning different techniques, modalities to really connect to source and understanding who we really are. Now, at the same time, I had an obsession with animals. And so my first path was actually becoming a marine biologist and zoologist. And so that's what my PhD is in. So I had a career first as a professor of biology. And then my personal experiences with the esoteric, with the metaphysical realm, and with the galactics conflicted with mainstream science. And we'll get into that a little later probably, but I couldn't be a professor anymore. Just it was too much in the box at that time. So I left in 2002. So 20 years ago, I left academia, and then I ended up on a very different path. I went into the mortgage industry for 5 years. Then I followed my next passion of interior design and did that for 12 years, had a business doing home staging and interior design. And it was only 5.5 years ago or so that I started this spiritual business. And it's only a year ago that I fully came out as the galactic ambassador that I am. And so I moved to Hawaii 2 years ago, and moving to Hawaii and letting go the design company, letting go all of the mainstream paradigm that I was living in back in Washington State allowed me to fully step into who I am and what I do now.
Awesome.
Yeah. So what I do with my work, I do past life regression therapy. That was the first modality that I actually got trained in. And what I love about that modality is it really is effective at healing blockages and limitations in people's lives. And we get to the quantum level so that we can make those changes, in that deep subconscious mind, so that when people come out of the regression, it actually starts to rewire the brain.
Yes.
I also do human design as a modality because that's been really important in my life for understanding how I get to my yeses and nos and really trusting my inner wisdom that I have. And then now as a galactic ambassador, I teach people about all things extraterrestrial, extra dimensional, and I have a very strong connection with some different galactic groups.
I love that. So I jot notes because I like to ask considerate, meaningful questions of my guests because that's important, right? So I love a lot of what I'm hearing here because, yeah, you know, you have a PhD at biology, marine biology or biology, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Evolutionary biology.
Evolutionary. Cool. Well, yeah. And then you're a professor and you're perhaps because of your culture growing up in a very metaphysical household, going to a spiritual school, realizing about enlightenment, creating our own reality that we are gods. And I have something to say about that later, where that's been attempted by many people that we might call ascended masters who were killed for saying that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing is, galactic ambassador, me with my own humor in my mind and how I deal with people when they kind of question things maybe they don't feel comfortable with, is I have a way of using kind of like not to be sarcastic, a little humor. So if somebody were to ask me, why did you come up, why galactic ambassador, I would say, because I can. Why not? Why can't I be the galactic ambassador? Because what is an ambassador? And then galactic ambassador, to me, you're an ambassador of truth. What is known? So you're an ambassador of truth. There's more to this world. So you're a professor. You're not mainstream. So probably mainstream is the mechanical universe model, material reductionism. So there's these buzzwords like evidence-based, and it's a way to control what's approved of that supports the narrative. And I can appreciate scientific method, experimental design, correlational models versus longitudinal, cross-sectional. I know all about that stuff. I took empirical methods in graduate school myself, and I know about meaningful references and things, validity, reliability. Get it, appreciate it. But that being said, it's not a broad brush thing with all context. And not only that, these things can be used to shut people down. If they don't agree with you, they're going to throw out stuff like, oh, that's not peer-reviewed evidence-based. Well, that's just another way of controlling what can be talked about, in my opinion. So material world, reductionism, mechanical universe, and then these ideas of what we can talk about. I get it. My opinion is, because I do believe we can create our reality. Consciousness is so powerful. So if you have the power brokers that have understood this for a very long time, and from day one, they start programming you in school and all these things, they decide the meaning of things, prescriptive labels, because words have power. Some religions, I'll talk about specific ones, but they've tried to, a lot of people kind of misunderstand the deeper meaning of things, in my opinion. So in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was made a man among us, try to tell us some things, right? The words have power. So really, to the extent there's this God power to use that label, well, where is the power? The power is in our words. They create, right? So if you can influence what people think, you do control everything. You get to tell people what sickness is. You get to tell people the means by which you can get better too. So I can appreciate all that. This past life regression, rewiring the brain. So neuroplasticity, we hear that with other things. It takes discipline. You can change behavior. You can become another person. You can teach an old dog new tricks. That's false.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of things popped in my mind real quick, just to kind of give you some replies to a lot of the stuff you said. I really, really appreciate that. So my next question, and feel free to jump in, by the way. You can interrupt me if you need to. I just try to pull up the questions. All right. Okay. So second question is, well, it's going to be based on who you are. And yeah, you left being a professor because it was just, you were incongruent. You were not in alignment with that. You needed to position yourself to be your authentic self. The real Lisa Thompson versus the idealized Lisa Thompson of what society's telling you should be, right? So, okay. Question 2. There can be said there are many things that make up a person's health and wellness depending on what approach you are coming from. Okay. For example, if I'm a sleep neurologist, I'm going to tell you sleep it's the most important thing. And actually, it is pretty darn important. We could go a long time without many things, but sleep is something we really need, right? So some person is going to say, you got to sleep, all the other stuff. Yeah, but you need to sleep first. Or if you're a couples therapist, a marriage therapist, you might say relationships. That's the most important thing in the overall wellness. So physical health, mental health, your career, job, relationships, whatever you believe about the world, all these things are seemingly individual, but not really, because they come together holistically to make an individual. And Gestalt says that the whole is much greater than just the sum of the individual things. So any issue in any of these, you get the point, undermines the whole person. So depending on who you are in the healthcare system, spiritual community, you might have your point of focus, and not that any of them are wrong, because they're all important. So for you, in your opinion, and there can be more than one, by the way. So if somebody were to say, Dr. Thompson, I got all these business going on in my life, but really, if I got to start somewhere, what are maybe some of the most important things to triage is the most important things in my life? Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, my understanding with my personal experiences of my health journey throughout my life, but then also working with clients, is we got to look at the underlying emotional root cause of illness, because most illnesses in the body do stem from some emotional root, whether it's in this life or it could be in another life that's propagated here, because all timelines exist simultaneously. And so what affects one affects all. And so really getting deep down into what that is. Now, there are different ways to get to what that emotional root is. And so different modalities can provide the same answers. And that's one thing that I love about all of the different modalities that I've personally experienced and that I go to people for. A lot of them say the same thing and come to that same conclusion, which is a beautiful thing. So looking at the underlying emotional cause, and then really being willing to, if something isn't working in someone's life, to change it. Like, and having accountability, having a coach, a mentor. It doesn't have to be like the allopathic doctor, because they just want to put Band-Aids on things. They don't really want to get to what is the true cause. So I'm all about, that holistic approach to health and wellness, mind, body, spirit. And our bodies are meant to heal themselves. They have the absolute ability.
100%, 100%. Real quick, there's to use the buzzword evidence-based. So the pharmaceutical companies know this very well, because they've done, guess what? Placebo studies.
Right.
Huge. I think it's pretty substantial, at least 30% or more, which is huge. And when you're looking at the independent variable, the validity is to the extent that the independent variable, what's being manipulated, is actually having a cause-effect relationship. So anyways, it's pretty substantial in terms of when you look at it, empiricism and interpretation of study, it's very significant. So we do know that the power of belief, I guess it's tethered to something, a sugar pill, the body heals itself. We know this. There's proof for that. I'm sorry, but go ahead. Yeah.
You do know. And one of my heroes in this work is Dr. Bruce Lipton, biology of belief. And so I've been studying his work since the late 90s when I was a professor, and I was actually teaching it to my students, and it was still fringe at this time. And my students, this isn't in our textbook. This isn't real. And I'm like, just you wait 25 years, it's going to be like mainstream science.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I love that. Awesome. So I so appreciate that. And you said something about, so underlying causes, 100%. What is an underlying cause? Because what is the root cause with a particular person's systemically, which it might vary depending on the person, what type of trauma they might have, or what their particular issue is in any of those dimensions. Any one of those might be the underlying area that if you get that domino to fall, the rest will fall too, like in a positive way. So which one is the underlying? So emotional, I'd have to say, that's pretty way up there, because, kind of like in Star Wars Episode 4, the prequels, Qui-Gon tells Obi-Wan, be mindful of your thoughts, feelings, your focus determines your reality, right? So this is like even Star Wars reference. I think George Lucas was into Buddhism and other things like that. But as far as his influence on his movies. But the thing is, that is so huge, because if you want to use the term emotional intelligence, to understand that our belief, however we think and believe about the world, has an effect on the emotion we're experiencing. Our emotions then affect our decisions and our outward expressed behaviors and interactions with people in the world. And this is very cognitive therapy type stuff, but it's true. And by the way, they've known this for thousands of years. It's not just this new stuff. So the thing is, the problem is emotions are not always based in logic, but they are influenced by what we think. And the problem is we have a lot of distortions, right? You hear about these things. So readiness to change. You said that. You said, well, if they're ready to change, or I believe I heard you say something to that
Yeah,
effect.
they have to be willing.
Yes, man. I just want to like high five you on that. I mean, because I really appreciate that being a therapist for 24, 25 years. Yeah. Because look, the most powerful asset anybody going to a helper has is readiness to change. I don't care if you have the best qualified, loving, invested helping professional in the world that's ready to go to bat with you. And I say with you, it's a team effort, right? If you're not ready to change, that's going to undermine a lot of the building of insight, because that's really for me is the focus of the goal is to help people with insight, which is not the same thing as awareness, which I'm going to tie that into the readiness to change thing, because the most important thing is if a person's ready to change, and they may not have full insight yet, they may lack tools, and they don't have to be the smartest person on the planet, but if they have a reasonable temperament and readiness to change, that's a powerful person that can change your life, and you can give them the most average helper and they'll excel. Yes. You can give somebody the best helper in the world who's a freaking awesomest person, but if you're not ready to change, it's not going to matter. You can spend $1 million on rehab. It's not going to matter. You're not ready to change. So here's the deal. Here's my punchline I say in almost all my videos when this topic gets brought up, and what I say to my clients very respectfully. Well, you talk to somebody about that, and here it comes. Yeah, I know I do that. I'm aware I do that, but very dismissive statement of any responsibility. And it has a lot to do with readiness to not change. At a minimum, it's ambivalence. And what that really says is, yeah, I know, but I'm really not going to do nothing to change it. It can be a huge problem, because awareness and insight are not the same thing. I say this all the time. Insight is a result of your awareness of said behavior. You make changes to give you a different outcome. Changes in behavior is the evidence of insight of your awareness. So I'm not impressed with people's awareness. And, at a certain point, I can appreciate it, but I'm no longer impressed with awareness. What are we going to do about this? Insight to the problem. And people don't realize they're doing it. I try to help them with it. I'm compassionate when I do it. I said, so what I'm hearing you say, you're very aware that you do A, B, and C behaviors, and you know this already, and you feel quite okay about that, or you feel sure about that, and I can appreciate that. However, to be honest with you, when I hear you say this, to me it feels a bit like ambivalence, or it feels dismissive. Because what are we going to do about it? And to me, that's what matters to try to help people is what are we going to do to help your life change? Real quick, like most alcoholics know they drink too much, right? They know. Most people with an anger management problem know that they overreact impulsively and have unhealthy behavior. In fact, they'll say, yeah, I know I do that. And they might even sound remorseful when they're saying it. But what are you? Okay, so we're aware of it, but let's not be dismissive of then when people give you tools to change it. Because in my opinion, and I'll wrap up my little comment real quick so you can jump in. Here's the way I describe it. When you're trying to help people and they don't have the readiness to change, and especially anyone watching this video, you might have a friend, a family member, and they always want to be like that dump truck that comes to your front yard and just dumps a bunch of stuff on it and drives off, right? And you're like, wow, they're always dumping on me. And by the way, you can set boundaries and ask people to ask you first before they just dump on you. There's nothing wrong with that. But here's how I describe it. After a certain point, so let's say somebody gives you a situation, you're being supportive, you're listening, and you're not judging, and you try to help them with some suggestions, things that could help. Options, right? Options, alternatives. Yeah, but really saying they're not going to do nothing about it. At a certain point, here's what I describe it. I call it taking hostages. That's what they're doing. They're taking people hostage with their problem that they're not going to do nothing to change it. And that's what they do. They're taking hostages everywhere they go. You take the counselor hostage, the pastor, the preacher hostage, or taking their family hostage or friends hostage. And as soon as people get fed up and set boundaries with that, they get resentful and whatever, and they go and so, but nothing's changing, right? We know the definition of insanity, but anyways, I'll get off the little rant there.
Yeah. Well, are you familiar with Dr. Candace Pert, her work of Molecules of Emotions?
Oh, I haven't read any of her stuff, but I definitely could. Yeah.
She has passed away, but her work I think it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. She brilliant scientist, really uncovering the addiction of our emotions. We are addicted to our emotions, and this idea was presented really well in the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? which some of my friends created that movie a long time ago. But
Yeah.
The idea of, it's what you're talking about. People have to be ready to change. They have to be willing to get out of that
Yeah.
cycle that they get stuck in. But some people, they love, love feeling bad. They love being the victim.
Yeah, that's
They
right.
don't know how to be anything else than that.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I have a Psychology Today magazine. I think it's this year, and it's called The Curious Cachet of a Psychiatric Diagnosis. And basically what it's talking about are demand characteristics. So I have said label that then justifies my behavior. That's it. Yeah. I used to be a teacher when I was in graduate school, working on becoming a therapist. And I would have kids say, Mr. Hunter, I didn't do my homework because I have ADHD. I'm not going to sit in my chair because I have ADHD, or said label. So the label justifies my behavior. I can do it, right? Kids are smart. They can use stuff like that. Yeah. So adults can do the same thing. I remember watching a documentary. I think it was on HBO back in the day, and it had to do with a real life documentary of people going through a psychiatric system. And there's one individual in there, and this psychiatrist flat out calls him out. He goes, my opinion is, I don't think there's much wrong with you. I just think that this has become your career. It's what you do. That's right. That's how you get attention. That's how you justify where you fit in with your family. His brothers were responsible people going on with their lives, and here he is. He's just in his victim mentality. A psychiatrist back, I guess it wasn't so PC back then, right? You could say stuff maybe without, oh, you didn't give a person a safe space, right? So no, the psychiatrist told him that. It's like, you've made a career out of being a patient, a victim. Yeah. So anyways, and not to be dismissive of the seriousness of mental illness. It is serious. Some people do have can have more of a chronic situation that might be more complex involved. Organic schizophrenia, the brain is degenerating. There's actual organic stuff happen. So I'm not being dismissive. Mental health is serious, but there is a balance. There is a threshold between, okay, what area are we in with these phenomenon? Because it's not black or white. There's shades of gray here. There are situations it's not really an organic problem that the brain's malfunction and misfiring. No, this is a behavioral issue and a thought process issue and an emotional dysregulation issue. There's resistance to correct it, right? Yeah. So anyway. Yeah. Anyways, I'm sorry. That's my opinion. So yeah. What do you think about that? You can disagree if you want, by the way. It's totally
I agree with you. I just seeing different family members and different friends or ex relationships with the mental illness. Yes, there can be some brain chemistry off balance that might need some help, but a lot of the therapy, the traditional therapy that exists, and I don't know the way that you work with your clients, but a very close family member currently has a psychiatrist and a psychologist working with issues of potential bipolar, ADHD, multiple PTSDs, anxiety. And I do, I know that there are other more natural modalities that go beyond the talk therapy and the drugs that could help, but that family member isn't ready yet to look at those other options.
Ma'am. And you know what? It can't be all of it, though, even to the extent certain people need that. So if someone has a bipolar mood disorder, I believe it's what lithium carbonate, the medication, a mood stabilizer, other said drugs they might need to help regulate mood. So a lot of people with mood disorders have insomnia, sleep disturbance issues, and that's a whole other issue because now that's undermining them even being stable if they're not sleeping. So they might need medication, and that's managed by psychiatrists. They do medication management, and then usually they'll kind of farm out the therapy to a therapist counselor to do that separately, because they still need to learn tools, how to regulate emotions, how to have coping skills, all these areas we talked about. So they need that too. My personal experience, where I'm at, most psychiatrists, it's pretty much all of them. There might be the rare one that also does psychotherapy, but most of them, it's to manage the medication. They're not really doing any real psychotherapy anymore, not like the old-fashioned days. So it can be serious, like with sleep disorders, for example. My opinion, from what I've seen over 26 years or so, is that a lot of it can be just lifestyle, behavioral issues, and then up here type stuff, more so than it is your brain is just not letting you sleep, right? So, so anyways, that was my question about, I guess,
Okay.
some of these variables, right? So let me get into my next question. And by the way, you can go off of stuff that's not exactly the questions either. I'm just kind of giving these as a way to kind of, as a way to jump off of into topics. So, all right. Do you have any existential beliefs, philosophy of what you believe about this world? That's a big question, right? And our reason for being here, and or any spiritual belief about what is happening in this world regard to our purpose and meaning. I mean, what the heck is going on, right? Some people, if you live a sheltered life and you've been told your whole life that it's a very only one religion only, that's dogmatic, and the world is just very in this box only. So you can't even fathom this idea of intelligent life somewhere else, a UFO, or God forbid somebody tells you there could be another life on this planet that hasn't been discovered, like Bigfoot, Sasquatch. So then people start like, what? Cognitive dissonance. And I made a video about the Bigfoot that I always find it interesting that people can believe. And I grew up Christian, so I'm not dissing on Christianity, but people, and then I have other beliefs now that I'm older. I'm more of a general spiritual Buddhist and all these other type of beliefs now. But okay, anyways, the point is people believe without question Jesus was crucified, rose from the dead. And I have no problem with people believe that. Jesus walked on water. Jesus rose Lazarus from the dead. Jesus took a few fish, a few loaves of bread, multiplied them and fed thousands of people, turned water to wine. He kept the party going, right? Turned water to wine. He sure did. That's my Bible. That's my scripture that justifies me being able to drink. No, I'm playing. Anyways, that's Jesus' first miracle, by the way. He kept the party going, turned that water around. But here's the point. Yeah, no problem. I believe that. That's what my bubble taught me, because I haven't been anywhere else to think about nothing else. So, but do you believe in Bigfoot? Ah, heck no, I don't believe in Bigfoot. That's nonsense. There's no evidence and proof of Bigfoot. Never mind the evidence that people who make arguments about the existence of Jesus and Christianity and the resurrection is based on eyewitness testimony from an ancient scripture that was discovered all those years ago. Gospels written after the fact. The Bible didn't fall from the sky after Jesus crucified. It was written years later in Greek, New Testament, right? So anyways, the point is a double standard with what people are comfortable with, and then so dismissive of everything else. It just makes me kind of,
Yes.
yeah. Anyways, I'll be quiet now. But so why do you think? Well, yeah, why do you think we're here? What the heck's going on with everything? What's the point? Yeah.
So I definitely am not into dogmatic religion, and I fortunately never had to have that experience. I've had family members that were Southern Baptist, that were Methodist, Lutheran, all that, and so I would occasionally like go to church, just when I would stay the night with them. But I feel very fortunate that I had the mother that I did that was into the metaphysical and understanding what source is. So even though I do believe universe, source, God, they're all the same thing at that higher level. I don't personally use the God word. I like universe, source better because it has less of a charge for me. That's just my personal preference. So we are all connected. We are all one. We are all part of that source, and we're here. We don't have just this one earth life. We have many lives that are parallel because all timelines exist simultaneously at the quantum level. So our really slow, dense earth life, we feel like we have linear time, but time is not linear at all. Time outside of fourth dimension, time doesn't really exist. And so we're here as fragments of that source, of that energy, experiencing, feeding information back. We're here to be experiencing, learning, like just following our passions. That's really like the purpose in this earth life is follow the passion. And we have so many different dimensions of reality that we can experience. We are actually currently living. And so like for me, I have done a lot of deep work into my parallel lives that are not of earth. And so I have experienced myself being just energy and holding the space. I've experienced myself as many different non-earth beings. We might call them extraterrestrials or extra dimensionals. And so I've learned how to tap into those different realms and allow that information actually to channel through me. And what they want us to know, those higher dimensional beings, is that we really are all one. And my analogy that I like to use is if you can imagine a disco ball, and each little mirror piece of the disco ball would represent an individual here on Earth, but we're all part of one. But those of us that are closer together on the disco ball, we are seen out of that same window. So we have a similar perspective on what's going on in the world. The ones on the opposite side have a polarized reality. They see something completely different. And no one's right or wrong. There is no right or wrong in truth. And what happens is, so the light reflects off. So we're experiencing ourselves as these individual light beams coming off, thinking that we're separate from that disco ball. But when you trace it back, it's coming all from the same source. So that's the best analogy that I can explain.
I love that. That's awesome. And so we are all connected. We're all one. And that's been my belief. I'm more of a, I guess if you ever listen to Alan Watts, who hasn't listened to him before, right? He talks about all one. He's a philosopher. I think he's I listened to lectures he did back in 1971. I was born in 71. I'll be listening, but this idea of we're all one and that we're all connected. Time is not linear. You know, before I even had words to like talk about these issues, I remember intuitively thinking about these as a teenager, this idea of time, and then staring at the sky and it was red one night, like a tinted, rusty looking color. And I was just thinking, and then that I am, right here I am, and how there are all these existential questions. And then I thought about time, and I'm like, the older I have become, I'm 51 years young, right? A little more over a half a century. So the older I've got, the more I've had this intuitive awareness that everything's happening all at once.
Yes.
There is no, you know, the past, the present, it's all at once. So on the other side, to use, I guess, the way of speaking about it, the other side, you know, we're 3D, gets more dense here, but other side, however, that is probably difficult. People who talk about they've been there and they come back, they always said it's difficult to use words to describe their experience. So yeah, that everything is happening all at once. You mentioned parallel lives all happening at once. I find that very interesting. For those people who are Marvel comics, MCU movies, they have the multiverse, right? So you see this stuff kind of in like movies, pop culture. My question is, in your opinion, do you think that when we're dreaming at night, because I'm an avid dreamer, I've been lucid dreaming since I was a kid. I still get into them when I am more intentional to do it. And the experiences I've had with I guess individuals, entities, questionably even humans sometimes. And then what some of this means, I could do a whole topic just on dreams, right? But in your opinion, do you think sometimes people have crossovers into their parallel selves or worlds while in the dream state?
Yes.
And maybe this explains things like, wow, there's just something to this. It's like a surreal or deja vu.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say definitely.
Yeah.
And, you know, the body needs to rest, but the spirit inside of us doesn't ever rest. Yeah. And so it's going on journeys, it's astral traveling, it's going to other schools, other lives to experience and bringing that information back.
Yeah.
And absolutely.
Yeah. Now, maybe this will make sense to you, but I had a dream one time, and I won't say who the individual is for privacy's sake, but this individual, while they're still alive, attempted to visit me in my dream, but from the future tense after they were dead and passed away. It was their post-deceased self and that existence of that point of view coming back, attempting to basically try to explain something to me or say sorry. And I knew exactly what that was. I knew right away, this is them from the future. They're dead in this context. They're not in this world no more. Even though when I wake up, the person's still alive here at this time.
Yeah, the energy.
I knew exactly what it was. Yeah,
the energy is always existing. It just changes form, right? And so it can come from the future, you know, because it's right there all the time.
Yes.
It's just
and
time like
and to be honest with you, I was like, nah, I'm not going to let you apologize. Get out of here. I dismissed them. And then I later thought about it. Man, that's not nice. Maybe they needed that, or maybe I needed that,
Yeah.
but I wasn't ready to. So it's what it is, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, stay out of my dreams. You're not boundaries, right? It's like, I can't even get, you got to have, hey, spiritual boundaries, maybe, right? What you give access and voice to. Very interesting, right?
Yes.
Well, being a lucid dreamer, I can control it when I'm there, but go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, I would love, you mentioned Bigfoot earlier, and I would love to share what I understand about Bigfoot.
Go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
I have a very good friend that channels the Bigfoot energy and talks to them all the time. And I also, 2 weeks ago, had a client that experienced a life as a Sasquatch.
Okay.
And so we were able to get information about that. And so, you know, so yes, Sasquatch, Bigfoot is a real thing, a real being.
Yeah.
And they are interdimensional.
Okay.
So you're able to shift in and out of dimension. Their original planet, Maldek, was actually destroyed by a fear-based group of beings on that planet, not the Sasquatch, but it's now the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. So that was planet Maldek, where they were living. And so now they have an existence in and out of our dimension, and they don't want to be discovered because we have so much fear-based polarity and war and, you know, fighting here on Earth, very similar to what they experienced on their planet that got destroyed. And so their experience is they don't want to be found. They don't want to be seen because they're afraid of getting like hunted down, because people that come across them in the woods typically are hunters.
Yeah.
And we shoot first, ask questions later, right?
Yeah. I interviewed a gentleman who's a Bigfoot experiencer. Actually, this past Sunday, he made some astute observations. I was really impressed with this young man. One real quick, like as you mentioned, the hunters and rifles. He talks about he don't take rifles into the woods, and a lot of people who do unexpectedly are for but a moment allowed to even see a Sasquatch are unarmed people who had no intention in their energy. They're not out there looking to kill anything. They're just out. And maybe there is some context of boundaries that Sasquatch is comfortable allowing certain people, like, yeah, okay, here I am. But then it's very controlled situation. But this idea about people's cognitive dissonance with what they will double standard, what they want to believe. And this young man said, well, Bigfoot doesn't offer you anything. Very astute. And and I mean, you could talk about the deeper meanings of Bigfoot and what that, but just on to keep it simple, Bigfoot does not offer you anything. Religion offers you something. It's going to make you feel better about yourself, because we institutionalize guilt, fear, insecurity, and inadequacy. So you need us. And so you're going to fight to defend what we are, because we offer you something. We offer you that you're going to be okay, that you're going to get into heaven and not burn in a lake of fire forever. That's right. So I'm gonna, if I am enculturated to believe that from day one, I'm not gonna even challenge that, because I need that. It's offering me something. Don't you touch my religion.
Right.
That's right. But what does Bigfoot offer me? He ain't gonna save me from a burning lake of fire. So it's easy to dismiss Bigfoot. He ain't offering me nothing. So good for that young man, Taylor, if he's watching this video. Good for him. Very astute observation, right? Bigfoot don't offer you nothing. What's the motivation to believe in Bigfoot? Hey, but maybe we believe more in UFOs and aliens, which I do, because maybe they'll get us out of here, right? They'll come. It's not an abduction; it's a rescue. There you go.
Well, and that abduction word, Lisa Royal Holt in the late 90s, she recoined that phrase.
Yeah, it's not appropriate. I don't think it's
Say
appropriate.
temporary detainment, because everyone is always returned. And what I do understand, like really, this is my true belief. Everyone who has an experience like that, which I've had my own experience being on a craft, is that we sign up for that at the soul level before we are born into this earth life. We sign up for everything that we're going to experience with people.
Yeah.
So my toxic ex-husband, I signed up for that. I signed up to learn lessons from that.
I had 3 toxic bosses until I finally learned the lesson. I never had a toxic boss again. And of course, I work for myself now, so that helps. You know, this interesting thing about the Okay, you had the Bigfoot experience, the abduction thing. So my opinion is, so I was watching a particular podcast, and with these current, all of a sudden now the government has their, in my opinion, handpicked people to go out and be the voices of on all CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all these guys that are towing the narrative line about UFOs. Oh yeah, they do exist now. We are, and then you'll have Obama interviewing him. Well, we can say there are these things that they're unidentified and they do exist, but I can't say more than that. So now this one guy's talking about how they could be a potential security threat. They're trying to position them as, oh, be afraid, they abduct you, and they're mutilating cows. So
that is one of my biggest missions.
Yeah. Well, they're creating a fear narrative. So if we can't get y'all to disbelieve they don't exist, well, we're at least going to control the narrative. And some level of this is because they understand that people, a lot of people can have a healthy distrust of the government, and they know that, so they can capitalize on that with a bit of reverse psychology. Well, let's just tell them they're real. Then they won't trust us because they don't trust us anyway, right? So some of these can be replicated, man-made type of technology similar to UFOs, and there's the actual real McCoy, right? Dr. Stephen Greer, he's got a lot of documentaries. I watched his stuff, and he talks about a lot of these people. Always be skeptical when all of a sudden the media is just posting them up conveniently, giving them softball questions and not really pushing back, versus people that are other truth seekers and researchers that are not being given a voice. It's controlled. But this fear-based thing, there's two sides real quick. So there's two angles in my opinion. Angle one, reverse psychology, just say they exist, and then they're not going to believe in them because we said they exist, right? So it's create that reverse psychology, right? It exists now. Oh, well, okay, and I don't think it does. Joe Rogan, actually, they asked him on the Joe Rogan podcast, these UFOs the news are showing, and he was saying, well, honestly, I don't necessarily believe it so much. I think they might be man-made, something to that extent or along those lines. He said like that. And I remember initially thinking and feeling like, well, is he just trying to be dismissive of UFOs? But then I thought about it more, and I said, no, he's got a point in terms, if I think of it this way, it's not so much whether you can believe in UFOs or not, more so than you trust the government about what they're showing you and telling you. So I was like, that made me kind of think. The other points are it's going to make is I already said, like reverse psychology, tell them it's real and they don't believe us, or just control the narrative.
Right. So can I speak to that?
Go for it. Hey, we can go as long as you want, because I'm already done working today, and so I'm in my man cave upstairs. I got all the time, so it's up to you.
Okay. So the people like Luis Elizondo and all of the ones that are like, we have to treat this as a threat. And so yes, they want to treat it as a threat, because then the military industrial complex gets more funding. They get to become richer, and they get to build more things. Now, in the different extraterrestrial groups that I work with, so I want to explain. Anytime we still are in third and fourth dimension reality, third density, there is polarity that's going to happen. Good, bad, right, wrong, black, white, right? That's the Earth existence that we're living in. There are some ET races that are still in third and fourth dimensional reality that are highly technological. And yes, they may come and they may interact with the government, and they might have more of a service to self kind of agenda. But just like Earth humans, there are people that are highly compassionate, right? Highly loving and giving. And then you have others that are highly controlling and want to create this fear. So you can't put all of these third, fourth dimensional races into one basket only. Now, the ones that exist fifth dimension and higher, there is no more polarization. They understand that we are all one. They understand the unity, and love is the underlying fabric of the universe. And so, and we are part of them. We have up to 22 different alien races in our DNA, and they want to protect us. They don't want us to destroy ourselves like we did with Atlantis. And so when they are seen around the nuclear plants, the nuclear missile facilities, because craft are often seen in nuclear areas, and they're shutting them down. Well, so the Luis Elizondos of the world are saying, well, that's a threat. They're going to take over our nuclear weapons. And those of me and Stephen Greer's of the world are like, no, they're trying to protect us from ourselves by doing that, by shutting down those nuclear missiles. And so really the majority of the beings, I would say, probably 95% of the beings that come and interact with Earth have a service to others, compassion, love kind of agenda. And there might be, 5% that are coming and interacting in a not so negative or not so positive way. What I do understand about polarity is that it is a mechanism of evolution, a mechanism of change. So just like for me, my toxic ex-husband, I played the victim role. He was the tyrant. And when I got myself out of that and changed that, I was able to learn amazing wisdom to shift that dynamic. So even though in the moment it was like not a very fun experience to have, it was a mechanism of evolution for me. And so I can look at it from that higher perspective. So now some of the craft, I do believe, yes, we have reverse engineered craft. And we, from Roswell and other similar crash incidents, we also have had ET races interacting with different governments around the world, giving them some of the technology in exchange for whatever they want. Again, it's really a mechanism of evolution, and we get to choose whatever reality we want to live in, what timeline slice, because again, all timelines exist simultaneously. And the Arcturian that I channel, his major message right now is that focus on what you actually do want in your life. What kind of earth do you want to live on? And hold that focus. Do not focus on the negative stuff going on. Don't focus on any of that, because you're going to create more of that, whatever you're focusing on. So it really is, quantum mechanics, law of attraction. What you focus on is what you're creating. And so we can all experience different earths that we're living on, depending on where our focus is.
What's that? The Mandela effect, right? Where people notice things kind of change and like, hey, wait a minute, isn't this what was supposed to happen? I have this memory, but now it's different. People kind of talk about butterfly effect, Mandela. That might be a little bit different, but yeah, focusing on what world you might want to be attenuating yourself to. If we're kind of simultaneously all in these different experiences, well, which one do I want to be experiencing the most? Focus on that and what you want in that world, bring it into. So I can appreciate that, our words, our thoughts, all these very powerful stuff. And again, back to what I was speaking about earlier, is that's why things like the power brokers, people that kind of behind the curtains, pulling the strings, if you will. That's why you see, you get, in my opinion, you get the illusion of variety and choice of news networks, but in my opinion, they're not too much different in terms of their mechanism and how they operate and what they do to basically maintain two polarities: conservative, liberal, rich, poor. Let's focus on different colors of skin, whatever, right? So it's all polarities and what you present. And occasionally they throw a little bone in there about something pleasant and nice that's good, but then most of it's just
most of it is fear-based, negative, everything is going to happen.
So I can appreciate that. Awesome stuff. And I guess I was going to ask about metaphysical experiences, but you already touched on that. Bigfoot experience, Sasquatch, UFO.
And I've been in spacecraft. I also, again, regularly communicate. So in addition to the work that I do, like with past life, human design, being a coach, all that, I also do a night sky watch UFO tour here in Hawaii.
Awesome.
And we use advanced Gen 3 military night vision goggles to look at the night sky.
I saw a lady on a documentary with those goggles. I don't know if it was Sedona or maybe it was you in Hawaii. I don't know.
Sedona is where I initially experienced a UFO tour. And 5 years ago, and then when I moved here to Hawaii, I decided there's a lot of activity here. veil is very thin here, and so we see them every time we go
Okay,
out.
so some of the questions that are kind of popping up in my curiosity is that communications with other entities, like whether it's an interdimensional being, alien, Sasquatch. I saw a documentary with a lady in Arizona, maybe it's Sedona, where she has it's a P, the name of the alien. She talks about I don't want to mispronounce it, but she has a Facebook page. But she also knows she's both experienced with Sasquatch plus the aliens, and she draws pictures of them. Anyways, I saw her in a documentary as well. But my question is, okay, so if me being a curious person, you could buy a Ouija board back in the day, but I'm an outside the box. Like, no, I'm going to make my own. Why do I need to buy one? So I fabricated a Ouija board of my own design to where you could symbols, letters, the whole 9 yards. My opinion, that's real, 100%. I even take notes. I've had like stuff that like there's no way I could know that because I've never. And then I would confirm things, and then I kind of put it away. You know, maybe that's dangerous, but. So there's that. You hear about automatic write-in. Neil Donald Walsh, he wrote his books, Conversations of Gods, automatic write-in. So there can be different mediums by which, if we allow, I guess, relax and allow access, if we're open-minded receptive, that I guess said beings that are there are willing to collaborate with us, communicate with us. So I guess what mediums work for you, and then what would you encourage people as far as having discernment to know whether this is a good counsel or maybe mischievous, right? Because not all these people are necessarily the same. Some understand we're all one. Others might still be in that polarity, like you said.
They are.
So that we can be people who are not in the know can be vulnerable to things if you get taken advantage of. This happens in our polarity type world with organized religion, exploiting and defrauding people left and right. Because let's take advantage of them. These are here. Here's a sucker every day, right? Boom. Jonas Nightingale, Leap of Faith, the movie. He says there's a sucker born every day, right? He's that fraudulent preacher guy in the movie. Yeah. So, anyways, so what mediums work for you to communicate, and what can we say about discernment to know what you're getting is can be trusted? Yeah.
Okay, so this, I mean, what I realize is that I have probably been channeling most of my life. Even anytime we're creative, whether it's some expression in music or art, we are channeling higher dimensional energy. But how the ET energy flows through me, first it came with writing, the automatic writing, like Neil Donald Walsh. And then but I knew it wanted to come out vocally as well. And so I actually took a channeling class, and in that class, we learned how to relax enough and raise our vibration so that we could discern whether the entity or collective that was wanting to come through was of a high vibration, love-based message, as opposed to something that wants to keep people in fear. And so for me, just trusting it, knowing it, I was able to relax, and now I can actually vocal channel my Arcturians. And I know that as I do this more and more, they want me to keep working with them, that other groups want to come in and speak through me as well. So I'm fairly newer, like it's only been in this year of 2022 that I have been doing the actual vocal channeling.
Okay.
And as far as discernment, so there are channels out there that people follow that really they're focusing on the good and bad, like they're into like save the children and all the stuff that keeps people in fear and in a heightened state of like, oh my God, we have to help this and do this. Well, that, like, for me, I stay away from all of that and I don't allow it in. But also, like, I have learned to really raise my vibration and keep it there, because we are only going to attract what we are. So if we are a high vibe, then we can actually interact with high vibe beings. Whereas if we're vibrating lower, and it's just a frequency thing, if we're in lower vibration, then we're going to be attracting that and experiencing.
Awesome. You're talking about frequency and vibration and what we want to focus and feed into or acknowledge. So the industry and the business of disease, right? Cancer, diabetes, pick said progressive disease that is incurable. You just manage it. Great thing as a business model because there's no cure. You just manage it. So there's languages that are controlled in how you can talk about it. In fact, I think there's this one guy said it by accident, the American Cancer Association guy, president. He admitted that as much as 35% of all cancers resolve themselves on their own without any treatment. So yeah. So this fear-based stuff is the C word, right? Cancer, all these things, and so on. So what do you want to feed into? So
right.
It's kind of like people misjudge or assume things. So for example, if I go to a said convenience store and they'll have like, do you want to give money to the cancer place research? And I said, man, that would be great if the research was actually about a cure, like looking at the immune system, a holistic approach versus just pumping out poison in people for the last 50 years, whatever it is, not curing anything. And then maybe they get lucky and survive being poisoned, almost poisoned to death, right? Or just surgically cutting out tumors. If there's something more innovative going on than that, where they're going to cure the body through the immune system and a holistic approach, hey, sign me up for that. But just because, no, I don't feel like being virtue signaled in front of a bunch of people that I have to give you money, and just because I say no, it doesn't make me not a bad person. I can choose where I put support to help the collective good of the world. Virtue is not a monopoly. And that's another thing about the so-called spiritual community, is that some people have the arrogance to think that unless you do what I'm saying, you don't have virtue. Or even worse, if you buy this product that comes in this biodegradable package, you're a good person. If you're not doing it, you're horrible. And we're all woke and saving the planet. I can appreciate that. I can. But 5 + 5 = 10. 6 + 4 = 10.
Yes.
100 divided by 10 = 10. There's a lot of ways to have outcomes to help the environment. There's a lot of ways to be said virtuous. Right?
Yes.
Not in a box. Nobody's going to tell me how I'm virtuous or not virtuous when they don't even understand a bigger picture way of looking at. So just because I don't acknowledge your disease religion and the language you've been programmed to talk about, it doesn't mean that I don't have compassion. Maybe I do have compassion. Maybe I dare have more belief in human beings and the power of faith and the power of something greater than just a reductionist mechanical world. Which to me, I mean, it's intuitive that it's obviously not just that. But
yes.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And that's, I get people, it's time for people to wake up, but only the people that are ready to wake up are going to wake up to this. And we can't force anything on anyone. And, I think what I would say and what my, higher dimensional beings that I communicate with would say is we need to have compassion for each other. We need to stop fighting with each other and being polarized. Yes. Look at it from a higher perspective and understand everyone's got their own, opinions or views. And again, going back to that disco ball, we're seeing things from a different light, and it's okay. But we need to embrace our own diversity and our own experiences of life and not judge people anymore. And the more that we can come to that compassion and love for humanity, then we are going to be able to shift as a collective into more of a fifth dimensional reality where people know more polarity. It is love and compassion and harmony.
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So we don't judge people from the point of view of this moral prescription of right and wrong. That's polarizing, like the ball example you give. So I totally appreciate that. So keeping these things in the perspective of this this polarization you're speaking about are just different ways. I guess the ball example is like neither way is necessarily wrong, depending on that person's point of view, right? So maybe empathy and trying to have accurate empathy or understanding of the other person can help people have more tolerance and compassion of each other instead of jumping into this rigid, it's black or white, right? All or nothing. And that's what actually undermines people being able to come together.
It does.
Yeah. The judgment part, I have a whole video about judging people. And it's a play on words. The title is, yes, you can judge people, big question or question mark. And right off the bat, I talk about the type of judgment I'm going to speak about is not the judgment where you think you're better than people. That's superficial, surface level. Oh, look at the clothes they're wearing, or what kind of oh, he's a janitor. Oh, he's only a janitor, right? Oh, I'm a doctor, or where we're pretentious, presumptuous about other cultures and people that are different than us. So then we prescribe a judgment. Oh, they're look at these people. So that's not the judgment I'm talking about. That's not good judgment. Hopefully people get away from that, like what we're talking about. However, there is something that is like a judgment, a discernment when you're dealing with people, whether it's, hey, this person is a different vibration for me. It doesn't feel comfortable. So based on my good judgment and my discernment, I don't feel comfortable with this person's behaviors. So I may need to deploy some healthy boundaries with these types of people, not because I'm judging them and like, oh, you're a bad, horrible person. No, I can totally have compassion and understanding that that's just who that person is. It's not personal.
Right.
But at the same time, have a judgment that what's best for my reality that I get to create. These people are probably not going to be good for me in my experience right now, not in this lifetime. So then I have said boundaries. And then toxic people will do, oh, but you're judging me. Only God can judge me. Which to I say, yeah, you're right. I am judging you. Based on my judgment, I don't think it's a good idea we hang out anymore, right? So I don't feel comfortable with your behaviors, right? But that's gaslighting. Whenever you try to call out something that you're not comfortable with, which is okay, it's being assertive, right? You're taking responsibility for your feelings, emotional availability. So I feel undermined. I feel disrespected. I'm not feeling valued when you do said behavior. This needs to change or this is not going to work. I get to decide the rules by which people have access to my experience. So this is not the type of judgment people want to gaslight you with. And what the message is you're not allowed to call me out when I mistreat you. You're judging me, or you forgave me. That's a big one too. Yeah, I try to forgive you, but that doesn't mean by default you get to go back to being the same way you was before. Another manipulation. Yeah, I got videos about all that stuff.
Okay.
I want to ask. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would just love to say, in my experience, that we have to stop judging ourselves. We have to have compassion for ourselves and love ourselves first and foremost, because the more that we have that love and compassion for us, then the more we can give that to other people.
Yes, ma'am.
And so really when people are judging others, that's just a reflection of who they are.
Yes, ma'am. I love that. And I jokingly will say when people have these type of comments, I'll say, hey, I admit it. I love myself, right? Not in a narcissistic way, but I love myself, right? Narcissists actually have a lack of empathy. They're superficially charming. Ted Bundy was a very charming person. That's how he got a lot of victims.
My first ex-husband.
Yeah. Superficially charming. They can endear themselves to people, but there's nothing surface level. They truly lack empathy. And when you no longer meet a need that augments what's good for them, then they have no use for you no more. Or if they lose control, they can become violent. All kinds of things that can be said about that. When their tactics no longer work, they result to violence. So this idea about the toxic person and setting boundaries and the whole forgiveness. I was going to say something real quick to what you said earlier about loving ourselves. Okay, so how we treat other people can be a reflection or a mirror of ourselves. Relationships can be a mirror of ourselves. Maybe it says more about our own awareness of ourselves, how we're feeling about other people. So loving ourselves is a good thing. Yes, there's a balance. No, it's not saying being self-absorbed or that you can't be considerate of what's around you. Not saying that either. So these balances. So I appreciate that. Love yourself 100%. Most important relationship, because if you don't fix that, it doesn't matter what city you move to. It doesn't matter what job you get. I don't care if you have 10 new partners in a row. Wherever you go, there you are. It's going to be the same thing. You got to change yourself.
Yes.
Like that. Oh, man, I've had every time my job is, my boss is always a jerk. Well, that's very interesting because the last 10 jobs you've had in the last 2 years, your boss is always a jerk. Right. So, yeah.
Well, with relationships, I realized I was the common denominator in all of them. So I had to change me to then have a different experience.
Hey, let me ask you a question about what you think about like ghost are, if you want to use the word ghost. I've had some ghost experiences in my life, in my 20s. And the first time I realized, and it was scary, but not for the reason you might think it was scary. what was scary is when I realized that this is actually happening. Oh, like, yeah. So most people are familiar with when you're kind of in the transition of being awake and a sleep state. You're kind of back and forth. You're almost awake, but then you're still asleep. And so you might still be having some experience of a dream, even though you're almost awake. It's back and forth. A lot of people have that happen. Again, I have lucid dreams. I dream every night. It's also an indication of good quality sleep when you have dreams, that REM cycle sleep, so as they call it. So all these prescriptive mechanical labels, right? Or processes that we give labels to every process. So okay. I'm living in this house that was being rented, occupied by probably 5 other people, 6 other people. It was a big house, older house, hardwood floors. So I'm in my bedroom, and my feet are sticking out from underneath the sheets, and I feel something kind of like, just imagine if somebody was like just kind of like doing that to your foot like that with their hand, like this rub,
Yeah.
like going back and forth with their hand. And so I perceive that something is smacking my feet like a hand, but I think nothing of it because I'm still like, oh, I'm asleep, I'm dreaming, and so something keeps doing it, kind of like it's trying to get my attention. So I finally become awake enough to where I see an elderly man, flannel checkered shirt, had like some red and black, long sleeves, faded blue jeans with like some type of rudimentary type of wasn't like officially a belt, but it was something that made a belt, and like white as snow hair, thick hair too. He had all his hair thick, and just had a look of kind of like, hey, who are you? Curiosity. And I wasn't scared at all. It's more like just processing it. What is this? And part of processing it is, well, maybe I'm still dreaming. But the point when I realized that I'm fully awake, I'm not asleep, and that's still there in front of me. I jumped up. My instincts kicked in, fight or flight. I jumped up and swung at it because it scared me. It's like, it startled me because like, hey, is it somebody breaking in? And as I'm swinging at it, it kind of just goes away. So everybody heard me like, like, and then, but nobody said nothing. And there was another experience with a pressure on the bed, and then something kind of like a black spear whirls and goes out the hallway. So long story short, I wasn't the only one who had experiences in the house. We all started talking about like, oh, wow, okay, so I'm not crazy. It's not just me. So what's your opinion within your understanding of the universe, consciousness, source, transitional processes, if you will? What's going on with whatever these entities are? We call them ghosts, that are, for whatever reason, they're here. Some people say it might just be on a reel, like replaying. It's an old residual memory. Or some people might say, no, it's more intentional. It's actual intelligence. It interacts with people.
I would say both.
You say both?
I would say both. It kind of depends.
Yeah.
It can be residual energy that's trapped, that hasn't moved on, that is maybe playing on a reel. We don't ever die. Our energy doesn't die, right? It just changes form. And so some of them don't realize necessarily that maybe they are dead, so they can keep replaying that. Now, I've got a lot of friends that are mediums that talk to dead relatives, dead people. And so there is that physical aspect of the energy that you've experienced. My current husband, he lived in a haunted house with his ex-wife, and all of the families that owned that house, it was built in 1896, they experienced the same lady ghost. Multiple families, and they even had a house reunion where the multiple families came together. They did research on like who maybe was the ghost in the house. The children could see her, they played with her, and then they grew up, and when they saw a picture of her, they found old newspapers. They were like, oh my god, that's the lady we used to play with. And so for her, she just she hadn't moved on in that form. Now we are all fragments. We have different fragments out in the universe, maybe in other universes. And so that's just one piece, one little fragment that could be stuck, but it can, be released by, like, there are people who help energies like go to the light.
What if they don't want to leave though? I made a joke one time because like, oh, why would they want to stick around? I'm like, well, maybe we're assuming that we're automatically so different when we cross over. Maybe we're not. Maybe we're still similar in terms of
Yeah.
personality. So on social media is like a mirror of human behavior on many facets. So you see people, they call it trolling, right? You have somebody will get on a post, they start leaving antagonistic comments, trolls, right? And they derive pleasure out of getting people triggered and all worked up and all these fights in the comments. And they're just doing it to troll said post or person, just to mess with them, right? So I kind of joked. I said, maybe some of these spirits, ghosts hanging around, they just get pleasure out of trolling people that are still here. They'll go mess with them and look what we're doing. Mischievous spirit, right? So that would not surprise me if you had some spirits that are they're trying to get them to leave. They don't want to. They're having fun, or they're trying to resolve some issues. So they're a type of a troll, if you will. Yeah.
Well, and just like with different beings, you know, higher dimensional beings, there are lower dimensional beings. Everything is vibrating in a different kind of frequency. And so, yes, there are what we would call ghosts or spirits that definitely reside in that very dense, like icky kind of energy.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, so you interacted with Sasquatch while in a UFO, is that right?
No. So I personally haven't had any Squatch experience.
Oh, okay. Oh, they told you about Sasquatch.
My client, we relived a life where she was Sasquatch.
Okay, that's fine. I was trying to clarify the context of your.
And one of my very good friends, she actually has experiences all the time. In fact, yesterday she left me a voice message about her latest experience with them, because they bring her gifts, they talk to her, they mess with, they play with her, and she actually gets information from them.
Sure. Well, because I had some Sasquatch questions. Maybe you might be able to answer.
I might know the answer.
All right. Well, okay. So if Sasquatch is from a previous planet that was ruined, they came here, so maybe they're what's that, a refugee, right? They're here from another world, not country. So they're here. So they had to, I would imagine, what we might call technology. They had some means to get here. Okay. So here they are, they're set up doing their thing, they're interdimensional. They can control to the extent of how they're seen. Right. So maybe they can affect things. Technology based. There's actually, I know a guy, he tried to take a picture of a government drone up there. I won't say where, but he was trying to, they were out there. He's like, man, this is bizarre. And they were going by. So he gets his iPhone out and try to record. No, as soon as he put the iPhone out, it shut off completely. He could not use it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He later was able to use it again. He's like, what the hell? I can't video these drones when they're in this area. Won't let me do it. So, you know, people can say conspiracy, whatever, but that was his interaction with that. But the thing is, okay, so Bigfoot's here. Yes. If they can be this elusive, sometimes maybe people think about it too simplistically in regards to their reasons to not believe there's a Bigfoot. Well, by now we would find bones, a body, which nature by itself has a way of getting rid of corpse. I mean, scavengers, animals. I have a lot of deer where I live at, other animals. I was telling Taylor in my other video. And it's not like you just walking down the trail and, oh, hey, there's a full intact deer skeleton conveniently there for me to, hey, look, deer exists, right? So it doesn't work that way. It's not as easy as you think, just with nature by itself. But if you were to assume, let's say people just want to say Bigfoot, let's pretend he's just terrestrial only. He's not extraterrestrial. Say he's terrestrial. He's a hominid before you get to the big jump to us, where the aliens intervened and created us. Maybe we'll splice in with a hominid, for example. But let's say it's a residual leftover of the hominid that's not completely extinct, he's all out there. And so if we're just saying he's a terrestrial, he's not extra. So we're just using that argument for why people can be dismissive. And then I'm giving all the possible scenarios. Well, let's say that animal or pre-hominid, which is before us, close to us, is reasonably intelligent to understand that we are dangerous to its well-being. It would probably, like a lot of animals, have fear, fight or flight. It's an instinct, their own self-preservation. And unless they're starving to death or threatened, they're probably going to leave you alone. So if let's say Sasquatch, if it's just only terrestrial, could still be intelligent enough to say, hey, I just need to be very careful and staying away from people, right? So there's that. Okay. But let's say we're going to go with interdimensional, which I'm fine with that. He's interdimensional. This is even better in terms of a defense against, well, how come we can't see him that easy? Well, okay, if he's from another planet, he or she, Sasquatch, it had sufficient technology to get here, so that denotes some intelligence and capability. So Bigfoot, Sasquatch is here. So if they have the ability to do that, I would imagine they have a pretty good, reasonable ability to influence how they're seen as well. So my question is, I wonder what kind of infrastructure does Sasquatch have in different locations that they're at? Maybe they're underground, or they interdimensionally go to a different space, if you will.
I think yes to both of
Yes
to both of those.
Yeah.
Based on conversations that I've had and the experiences. And so they do have a mechanism which they can basically, like in Harry Potter, the invisibility cloak.
Okay.
They can actually, put an invisibility field around them where that's how they can disappear. Some of them can go in and out of portals, which is how they can disappear from sight. You see them one moment and then they're gone the next.
Yeah.
There is a correlation between Bigfoot sightings and UFO sightings.
Okay, I've heard that.
And, so there are a lot of different ways that they can evade humanity to not be seen. Yeah,
I appreciate that. Now the thing is, I'm on a Facebook page called Bigfoot Believers, so I sometimes will put memes playing around. I trust me, I'm a very open-minded person, spiritually, paranormal, metaphysical, mysticism, all this stuff. I've always been. So I'm very open-minded, trust me. But sometimes people, how they are, they make little memes and jokes and stuff. So I asked a very straightforward, practical question that people don't typically ask. It'd be something maybe Howard Stern might ask somebody, right? I said, look, people got all these questions about Sasquatch. I'm just curious, what does he use for TP out in the woods, right? He's got all that hair. All right. And then people, he uses rabbits, like, the rabbit, right? Like, so anyways, so these are practical questions, but it seems silly. So the question is their physiology similar to a humanoid like us, where they have practical needs? They eat, they go to the bathroom, they have do they have a female male, so they have sex to reproduce? And they might even need to brush their freaking teeth. This seems maybe a bit silly, and some people might take that antagonistically as it's trying to poke fun. No, these are the questions that pop in my mind. I think about practical stuff. Bigfoot's out there, and unless he's got a setup somewhere, it can be uncomfortable out there, just kind of Sasquatching around, right? So I ask these questions not to poke fun, like making fun of people who believe. I ask in all genuineness, right? What's their activity of daily living like, right? What is do they read books when they're bored? Do they hack into Disney Plus or Netflix, right? And they've learned our language, maybe. Who knows? What do they do for entertainment? You get it.
So as what I do know, yes, they do have different sexes still.
Okay.
They do reproduce, very similar. They do need to eat. Now they may, because they are able to go to that higher dimension, the less physical, like dense the body is. And so they don't necessarily have to eat as much as we do physically. But yeah, they do have all of that you said.
All right. Well, all right. Well, I appreciate your time. We've talked about a lot of stuff here today. Do you have any questions you might want to ask me, as far as being someone who's worked in the mental health field? Because a lot of people assume things about mental health workers. I get a lot of people sometimes like, oh, when I used to work for places, you're just a bureaucrat, or you automatically think a certain way because you work in this industry. I know a lot of people that are psychotherapists, psychologists, psychiatrists that have very similar beliefs of stuff we're talking about, and so on. And not everybody toes the narrative line, but they kind of just walk that balance to do their job. And like a lot of people do, like a professor probably does to an extent if they want to work there, right? So what I do is I am authentic. I do use my the methods I use. There's no problem with. They're not going to say, oh, you can't do that, because I am using things that are within psychotherapy standards, right? But there are loopholes, because there's a thing called multicultural sensitivity, where you have cultural competency is what they call it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
as a part of a person's culture, if they have a particular belief, they might be Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, or they might believe in UFOs. They might believe in all that stuff. These things in and of themselves don't make a person delusional or psychotic. It's a belief system and part of a culture. So within that loophole, I'm able to listen to people, no judgment, and so on, versus I'm just blatantly biased with a bias, just trying to prescribe what people need to. Yeah. So you get it. So anyways, yeah.
I have a question for you because this is something that I had a download on a couple of years ago, and then it came again really strongly. And it was an observation of some of the mental illnesses, getting back to that, of
Okay.
where people see and hear things and they are deemed crazy, like
Yes.
schizophrenic or other things. And I have a grandmother, great grandmother, who was diagnosed schizophrenic. And the download that I got was she actually wasn't. She was having real experiences, but this was back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, where they didn't understand that maybe people could like interact with different dimensional beings or see things. And so I'm just curious what your understanding of people who see things and hear things is.
Okay. Excellent question. First off, right off the bat, I used to do intakes, inpatient psychiatric hospital for guess what? To determine whether somebody need to be hospitalized, inpatient for psychiatric emergencies. The criteria could be, the biggest one is danger to self or others. They're suicidal or homicidal. They may be unstable and psychotic, which makes them a danger to self or others. So they might be having auditory, visual hallucinations, tactile. Spiders are calling on me. There's no spider. Olfactory, right? Smell, things like that. Disorganized thought process, and you can tell by the way they speak. Sometimes this happens if people haven't slept in 4 days because they're doing methamphetamines. Right. No surprise, right? So I did this for a good 5 years for the county hospital where I work at. Now, back then, again, a lot of this is a combination of clinical skills, assessment, clinical judgment. Yes, you also call the doctor, you go over it with them, and then y'all both like talk about it, and then a decision's made to admit to inpatient or refer for outpatient. So the thing is, some of this is subjective. The DSM-5, where's my DSM-5? I think it's over there across the room. So DSM-5 is a diagnostic statistical manual of mental health, mental illness type disorders. It also has substance use disorders in it. So it has criteria of said to meet diagnoses. A lot of these are arrived at subjectively, though, by counselors. I think, in my opinion, the clinical psychologist probably has can do the better job at arriving at said diagnosis when they get to do tests, multiple times of meeting together as a process of evaluation to have something that's a better picture of a person, versus somebody just goes in, talks to a psychiatrist 20 minutes, leaves with a script in their hand saying that they have a generalized anxiety disorder or said mood disorder, right? Or whatever. You get it. So, okay, let's answer the question you asked. Okay. I see the biggest problem, it happens with children and adults, but specifically with children. I've seen children that, there's a disturbance happening, and their overall presentation is they're unstable. They look like they need to be here. They're not safe. Versus, my daughter said she talks to fairies. Versus, my son says he saw a snake in the toilet. My daughter says she has an imaginary friend. Or my son believes in that Bigfoot's real. So the kid will have some fantasy. You get it. And then they get admitted to the hospital. They're psychotic. They got a mental disorder. They need counseling to know reality and all that stuff. And some of these kids get put on very powerful, strong medications. That happens. It does. And if they have good insurance, even better chance they'll be admitted, right? But yeah. Okay. With adults, it's a little more tricky because children essentially are property. The parents are the stewards of the child. They have custody. The parent has a lot of power over the child. I used to see parents that would single moms living up the party lifestyle, bring in their misbehaving kids that they don't want to babysit for the weekend so they can go out and party, drop them off, say, oh, the kid was trying to he was trying to hurt himself. And I'm like, I could tell it was total BS. The kid was fine, calm, and well-mannered.
Yeah.
And then finally the doctor quit doing it. It's like, no, she needs to take him home. We're not her babysitter. This mom was trying to get her kids put in the hospital so she could go out and party. She's all in her high heels, all dressed up, lipstick, and she didn't appear to be in any distress. I've seen parents come in distressed because the kids has a problem. She appeared to be experiencing feeling inconvenience, right?
Right.
So children, very problematic and sad and unfortunate. With that said, there were quite a bit that did need to be there. They weren't safe for themselves. They needed more supervision until they could become more stable. Now, you can debate and argue as to why they're even like that. It's more of a trauma based because of the environment they're in. Most of this is environmental stressors, 100%. Most of it is. You can talk about, other stuff organically speaking, and about the brain, right? So we were taught in graduate school in neuropsychology that people with schizophrenia have larger ventricles, the spaces in the brain between the folds. As they get older, those spaces are getting wider and bigger because the brain's degenerating. Okay, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Who's to say that toxins or lifestyle or the way the person is, what they're putting in their body doesn't cause this tissue damage? And now they have these symptoms. There's a lot of things that can manifest symptoms that look like dementia or psychosis, but then they put them all under the same umbrella or label, right? A lot of reasons somebody can have problems of attention to focus or be hyperactive, but they put it all under the same level. You can be depressed and be hyper and irritable, right? Situationally based. So let's talk about adults. Adults is a bit different. Because once you're an adult, guess what? You have these things. I think we still have them. They're called rights. Rights. You can't just stick somebody in the hospital against their will because we have rights. So it becomes a bit more involved then as far as how you're going to stick somebody in a hospital. So in this sense, about things of what people see, then I think, in my opinion, the doctors are a bit more, try to be a bit more concise with making sure that this will fit a good clinical narrative. Like, okay, we have a lot more evidence. It's clear the person's unstable. In other words, they're not exclusively making a decision to admit him to the hospital based on, the person saw, I don't know, he saw Mary Poppins in the sky with an umbrella or something, right? They're not going to go by that alone. A lot of times they might look at the mood. Do they have psychomotor agitation, like they're very agitated physically? What's their speech like? Is it pressured? What's their thought process like? Do they seem to be very disorganized? Do they have evidence that they're intact enough that we can let them walk out that door? So a mental status exam is part of it is orientation to person, place, situation, and thing. Situation and place. Person, place, time, and situation. Oriented times all four spheres. So, okay, what's your name? My name's James. Okay. Who are you? I'm Genghis Khan, right? Whatever. Yeah, that's different. Yeah, well, maybe I am. Could be reincarnated, right? By the way, just because somebody says they're Jesus Christ, technically, that's not technically wrong.
No.
That's Christ consciousness. Everybody can be Jesus Christ. That's what he actually taught. Gospel of John.
Yes.
These things I do, you too, and greater. The Greek says Jesus taught, I am a son of God. We all can be children of God. We are all one, right? For which of these good works do you stone me? For none of these good works do we stone you, but that you would make yourself one of God. Jesus says, isn't it written that I said that you are God's, right? So all these things are clearly there. Paul even tried to continue that message of Jesus, who's born in a particular culture. He becomes awake. He tries to share a radically different message, and they killed him for it, right? So Paul's trying to tell them the same thing to the book of Hebrews. It's like, look, if you're in this Christ consciousness, then you're joint heirs to all these same things that Jesus talked about. We all, no, we're just going to pedestalize him, say he was the only son of God, the only one, then he shot up there to heaven, he's gone. Nobody else can do it. That's not what Jesus said. He didn't, and it's in there. Apostle Paul talks about it. Jesus talked about it. And so on. The kingdom of God is inside you. So a lot of people believe Jesus was a man He just happened to be born in the culture that was Judaism. And within what he knew about the world around him, he became woke, right? So he utilized the content around him as references to illustrate points. Which of you among you, if you're hungry, would give your kid a stone, right? Or send your child a snake, a viper, right? But God, God is love, right? Much for ourselves and how we think about ourselves. How they have no faith and his understanding. It's funny he says that because in the book of Numbers, the character they call God in the book of Numbers does exactly that. They're out in the wilderness, they're complaining, they want meat, their food, and God got angry and sent thousands of serpents, and many Israelites died that day, right? So he disagreed with all that stuff. That's the point. He's trying to tell them something different. He read that stuff. So anyways, this whole idea about, I guess where I was going with the this idea, right? What I was trying to say earlier, and I got on the tangent about being awake and these ideas of religion and all this stuff. So anyways, I'm sure you might have heard stuff that people have different ideas of who he was.
Oh yeah. And so it's interesting because in some of the channeled material and that I've filtered through, okay, does this resonate true for me? Is that Jesus, as a Christ consciousness, this was something that first happened in the Orion system. They were highly polarized, like we are here. And there was an Orion Christ that came in to teach the message of love and unity. And eventually they integrated that polarity.
All right.
And so with how polarized we are here, that was an experiment again of like, okay, well, that worked on Orion. Let's bring the Christ consciousness here.
Cool. Yeah, and I didn't mean to go on a tangent. Now I remember the original thing.
I know, that's a whole nother topic. I know.
I was like, no, my brain was going. So okay, the adults in the psychiatric hospital admit people for seeing things. So adults, I probably, in my opinion, is a little more stricter because adults have rights. You can't just take people's rights away unless you get a mental health detainer warrant, which the police can do that. They can do a 24-hour warrantless detainer. It's a peace officer warrant. They stick you in there so they can evaluate you. If you get a court-ordered one, which is you gotta go before a judge, everybody fills it out, the family take it to the judge. They can put you in involuntary status, but it's a greater process to take away someone's rights once they're an adult. So you gotta really prove that the overall presentation of a person, that they're so unstable, they need to be there. Otherwise, potentially you could sue them for violating your rights. Children, like I said, it's different on them because, well, it's whatever the parents agree to, right? Yeah. So it's unfortunate. And to summarize the point of your question is, I don't believe as a mental health professional, just because somebody believes in something or says they can, I mean, I've know some kids said they saw their grandma who's passed on. They don't need to go to the hospital for that. I mean, that's ridiculous. So no, this, in my opinion, is using good judgment, discernment, and knowing the difference between, is this person presenting as unstable or are they stable? You can have beliefs and say you see things and be very stable, doing your homework, taking care of your chores, taking care of yourself, responsible, everything's going fine. That's what you got to look at as a bigger picture is the point. Now, if you have somebody who's been hoarding for 10 years and doesn't do their hygiene, they never shower, they sleep all day, and they believe that Elvis talks to them too. Okay, maybe you can get past the Elvis thing, but are you going to ignore the rest of the stuff? Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, my ADHD got in the way. I started going everywhere.
I know we're going long.
Yeah. So yeah, I appreciate your time. It's been probably close to an hour and a half, so I apologize if we went over a little too long. But I like your aliens there in the background. Pretty cool stuff, right? So
that's Illurum and Celestia.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, real quick, so Atlantis, did they technically get in a war with the Luminarians, and that's what caused all the destruction?
Yeah, that's again a whole.
Yeah. No, I read that real quick in a different thing. Yeah. So anyway.
But I do understand, yes, they were at war with each other, but Atlantis had the technology. Lemuria was not technological in the same way. They were much more spiritual.
Okay.
But ultimately the weapons that Atlantis had is what destroyed it.
Yeah, they were being bullies. So, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let you get going. Thank you so much. Do you want to tell people the name of your website, if you have a YouTube page, any social media, and then I'm going to put it in the description below, and how people can contact you for your services or your books too.
That's perfect. So my website, 2 different ways to get to it. Easiest one is mysticmanta.com, mysticmanta.com, or drlisajthompson.com. I do actually have a podcast called Connection to the Cosmos with Dr. Lisa Thompson, and that is on YouTube.
Okay.
So you can just type in that whole Connection to the Cosmos.
Yeah, I'm going to subscribe today.
Thank you. And then I am on social media, mostly on Facebook. So I have my Dr. Lisa Thompson business page. I also have a Big Island UFO tour page sharing that information. And then I have a private Facebook group, Connection to the Cosmos.
All right, good deal. Well, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. And thank you for being so patient with my, I guess, jumping around here and there, and being so gracious and kind to give up your time. To anyone who's watching this video today, go to her channel, Dr. Lisa, her channel, right? And also my channel, right? I'm just going to see, when you get to know somebody, it's first name basis, right? So here you go.
Yes.
Right. That's right. So all right. All kidding aside, Dr. Lisa Thompson, her YouTube channel. And I'd appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to me too, right? So maybe a 2-for-1 special. There you go. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of the week. Bye.